Great. Okay, so now we are being recorded. Perfect. Yes, so thank you all for joining us. I'm hoping that we all leave feeling more inspired and like we have a little bit more of an idea of kind of how this all works and how to do the work that we're all interested in. So quickly, I'll just say that I am a current second year NICU fellow at Seattle Children's and the University of Washington. And I've been working with some of the fabulous people who are on this call who are fellows elsewhere to put together these sessions. So Ami Amin, who is a third-year fellow about to graduate at Texas Children's Hospital. And then Wendy, who is a second-year fellow. If I'm not mistaken, let me know if I'm wrong, Wendy. I was like second guessing myself if you were second or third year at Mayo. Perfect. And then Sarah, who is a second-year fellow in Miami. So we are super excited to have you. Oh, say that again. I missed it. Did I get that wrong? Apologies if I.
Sorry, I'm on service.
Oh no, thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I was a bit caught up. But thank you for introducing. Thank you.
So we are, so we have three wonderful panelists today that we'll hear from. Scott Guthrie, who is at Vanderbilt University, Melissa Bowserman, who's at the University of North Carolina, and then Ellen Diego, who's at the University of Minnesota. And we're hoping that this can be kind of an interactive session. So I wanted to start with a poll just to learn more about who all is here. So can you all see, is the poll up for everyone? Okay, so go ahead and put in your response to that. Awesome. Cool, that was so fast. So it looks like we, can you all see the results or no? Share results. There we go. Okay, so it looks like we mostly have fellows and residents here, which is fabulous. And then a couple medical students and pre-medical students. Cool. And I'm going to assume that the neonatologists are maybe our panelists who responded. So that is fabulous. Cool. And great to know. Okay, so with that kind of in mind, I think we can go ahead and get started. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. If there's anything that anyone thinks of that is like a burning question during the sessions, you can put it in the chat or just hang on to it until the end. And so without further ado, I'll pass it off to Ellen as our first panelist to get started.
Hey everybody, I am gonna try and share my slides here. Let's see if it's successful. Okay, can you see? Let's put it in slideshow mode. Okay, can you see? Oh, I'm not hearing anybody. I don't know if Hannah, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can. Can you see slides?
Yes, we can see them. They're beautiful.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to start the timer here because I am a chatty person and I will go over my allowed 8 minutes very quickly if I don't pay attention. And I'm also feeling some pretty horrible imposter syndrome right now being amongst this panel. I am absolutely the early career neonatologist here who just left fellowship training. So I'm excited to be a reference for anybody who is about to make that exciting transition from fellowship to early career and kind of picking your first job after all of your amazing fellowship training and hard work. And so again, I'm Ellen Diego and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota. I've been here for about 3 years and I spend about half of my year shakes out to about 50 to 60% in the state of Minnesota, and then the rest of my time during the year at all of my clinical sites throughout sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm sure many of you guys are aware, but for those who are not, maybe early in your training as medical students or residents, about 98% of all babies are actually dying in low and middle income countries, which obviously is a staggering proportion. And sub-Saharan Africa has the highest under 5 mortality rate in the world. So it is not a coincidence as to why I spend so much of my year working at my sites in sub-Saharan Africa, because my hope in this life is to improve outcomes for our very, very vulnerable babies who are born. And these are just some fun photos and kind of a list of all of my active clinical sites. Some I do a lot of work with remotely, and a lot of it is on the ground time as well. So let's go to the next slide here. So one of the questions that we were asked to answer, number one, when did you become interested in global health? So I would say it started the global excitement started early. My mom was a Delta flight attendant, a single mom, and she didn't know what to do with 3 young children often. So she would have us pack little bags and we would sit standby. This was pre 9/11, so we could get on a flight pretty much anywhere for about $7 US and travel wherever we wanted. So that was kind of where my travel bug started. And I would have loved to engage with global health when I was at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine for my med school training, but unfortunately, the only opportunities available for travel were actually for people who spoke medical Spanish in South America, which I did not. I decided French was the language that I was going to learn in high school. So I would say, you know, if you could go back in time and learn some medical Spanish, that might be a pro tip that I have for you guys. But it all worked out in the end. I ended up really kind of ranking. So when I was looking at residency programs, I decided to rank programs that had a focus on global health, if not within the residency, the pediatric residency, at least within the College of Medicine, and really found a nice spot at the University of Vermont, where I met my very first and longest lasting global mentor, Dr. Danielle Arrett, who was a neonatologist there, who also happened to be the director of global health for the Vermont Oxford Network. For those of you who are not familiar, VAUGHN is actually one of the largest quality consortiums for neonatology and neonatal outcomes. And so there's a big focus on quality improvement. And so it was a really good fit and just kind of happenstance that we met each other and started to carve out some scholarly work that we could do together. So obviously this is not rocket science here, and I'm sure many of you guys are aware of this, but having good mentorship in global health is probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give you, because you cannot do this by yourself. You cannot engage in a vacuum. And so having good institutional support, but not only that, having good mentorship support kind of all over, at your site, in the US, but also at your international sites is really important. So if you guys scan the QR code, and I'll make these slides available, there's some really good tips and tricks and a nice little manuscript that I did with 2 of my who I consider my global health colleagues. These are just a few pictures down below here, but there are many, many more who I've met and helped me along the way. Another self-serving figure here that we designed for this paper, if you guys are interested in giving it a read, is really talking about the progression through your medical career and through your training, how you can engage locally and globally, and sort of what it changes as you're going through the process. So, many times you're kind of starting at clinical sites as an active learner, really just learning about tropical disease pathology or clinically managing patients, that you wouldn't necessarily be exposed to here in the US. And then hopefully, as you engage and as you progress, and create, kind of longitudinal relationships, hopefully you'll start to engage in things like skill transfer or educating people on the ground in countries who don't have access to special types of training, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then, of course, scholarly initiatives as well. So this is just kind of a flow of, how things can progress as you guys progress along in your training. So some advice that they also asked us, I think number one is don't take no for an answer, right? Just because it hasn't been done at your institution doesn't mean that it can't be with great mentorship. Learning transferable skills is really important so that you can be not just a clinical observer, but that you can also potentially help transfer knowledge and information to the staff on the ground. Quality improvement. You will hear a lot from me about why I think this is a fantastic way to engage in the global health arena, because oftentimes it is a type of research methodology that can be done at pretty low expense, and also is something that can be done in rapid sequence, rapid cycle, and it's very adaptive to sort of changes that are happening in real time. And so I think it's a really great way to engage in a scholarly way. And then, of course, always take more biostats. I just feel like in life, I always wish I had taken more. And then, of course, Spanish. So some transferable skills that you guys can kind of read through a little on your own time. UNICEF has a really nice little manuscript that kind of goes through different things. And then if you're interested in neonatology, I think, some areas like the Helping Babies Survive curriculum, which is sort of the NRP for low resource countries, quality improvement teaching, and then, of course, point of care ultrasound are some kind of options for people who are interested specifically in NICU. Here are some photos of me doing some of those trainings in the ENC, what we now call ENC 1 and 2. It was rebranded recently, or the Helping Babies Survive curriculum. This is a lot of what I do, which is teaching transferable skills and then evaluating sites to see how well they are able to adhere to the best practice standards through QI research. So I included a little table about how QI differs from traditional forms of research for anyone who maybe hasn't engaged in QI research before. And this I've kind of already talked a little bit through, but so how do you get started forming and strengthening connections with teams? Number one, good networking, what you're doing right now, right? Being a part of groups where you'll get alerts through emails, forming relationships within some of these big organizations in the US, and of course, internationally as well. Good mentorship, and then of course, really seeking within your institution, what opportunities are available for you guys in your training, and maybe making some priorities based on your rank list of where you might go to residency or fellowship training to kind of really make sure that you have a good support system at your institution. And my last slide or two is really just knowing that you don't have to get on an international flight to be able to do, research in sort of what we consider global health. We know that there are disparities in care everywhere, even throughout the United States. And I think my eyes have been opened significantly being here in Minnesota to the Indian Health Services and a lot of the different communities, even within the US here, where you can get a lot of experience and develop your skills working with lower resource communities, even within the United States. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but another plug to say, making sure that you understand what resources are needed to help those individuals. So I will stop there. My time is up.
Thank you, Ellen. That was perfect timing. And that was really great. Thank you for sharing all of those. Yeah, thank you for sharing about your path and all of your experiences. That was super helpful. Scott, is it okay if we do one more poll before you start?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay. No, you're totally fine.
Over to my cursor. Yep, there you go. Sorry.
Hold on. It's not okay. Okay. Let me just pull this up. Okay, so here is our next question, just about how much experience you've had in global health, whether this is something that you are just curious about and want to know more about how to get involved with, you've just sort of dipped your toe in and want to figure out how to jump in, if you've done a little bit of global health work, or if you feel like you have done a ton and really are trying to figure out how to maybe like help other people at this stage, or really kind of like solidify some long-term relationships. This is great. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so let me share this with folks. So it looks like we have about maybe a quarter of the people who are just curious about getting involved in global health, and a quarter of people who feel like they are pretty seasoned and are curious about learning more. And then about half of our attendees who have some background in global health experience. So I think promising that there there are people at, all different levels, and people to collaborate with and network with and brainstorm with, kind of regardless of where in the pathway you are. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, Scott, I'll pass it off to you.
All right. Let's see. Everybody can see that, right? Boy,
Yes.
I guess I'm the senior person on this panel, Hannah. And Ellen did such a good job, like going through everything. So Ellen, some of your slides that you showed, like your career during I was doing my math. It's been 31 years since I have been involved in global health in one way or another. So I have made every mistake and gone through every stage of what you showed. So hopefully, as I go through this, all of you will learn from the mistakes that I made, and it'll help you do a much better job in this. So how I became interested in global health. I've actually been involved in this since my pre-med days. As a pre-med student, I got involved with an organization called Health Talents International, and it was absolutely awesome because for like one summer, I went down to the Dominican Republic. I did not speak Spanish. Part of the program was you got immersed into the culture by living with a family who did not speak English, and you had to figure out the travel in that city in order to get you to the clinic in the part of town. So it was a wonderfully fascinating experience trying to deal with culture shock and language shock and just navigating a city and figuring out as a pre-med student, like, how can I be helpful and useful in these situations? So that was pre-med. Then during medical school and residency and fellowship, I was involved in basically what Ellen showed in her slide, going and doing work in multiple different countries and locations and trying to do things that were helpful and useful. But a lot of times you did sort of feel like a medical volunteerist when you were doing those things too. And as I progressed further in my career, honestly, I got a little bit dissatisfied doing that as a neonatologist because you're going in and you're doing something that seems so temporary. And so trying to figure out how you can make a sustainable change and a long-term difference in those locations that you're working with. So I guess over my career, I've been involved in 5 different continents doing medical care in one way or another. I can't recall exactly how many different countries, but I will show you a few of those. So what advice would I give to myself if I was in your place right now trying to get started in global health? It would be these 4 pictures right here, and hopefully all of this sticks with you. One, you're going to get sidetracked. Okay, that's just inevitable. You're going to finish your training. You're going to try to establish your career. You're going to have a family. There's lots of different things that are going to sidetrack you at some point in your career as you're trying to make global health a part of what you do. All of you are on this because it obviously means a lot to you. It's something you want to be involved in. You've got to figure out how to navigate, and that's that next slide, navigate, or next image, navigate your career path where you keep this central to it. And also, as you're figuring out where you're wanting to work, you've got to navigate that culture. You've got to navigate that society. You've got to navigate all the different problems that you're going to be faced with as well, and doing something sustainable, something that's going to make a difference where you've chosen to work. The money bag. This is what we were talking about. Those of us who were on just a little bit early. There's lots of funding issues with global health, even more so now, probably at any other time. We were joking too that just wait 4 years and things will completely change, hopefully. But global health, unfortunately, is going to be one of those first things that we're witnessing that's getting cut as all of these other things get cut. So you've got to figure out how you're going to fund it. Having done this for 30 years, I've self-funded a lot of stuff. You may have to do that as well, some of your trips. Some of you who have done this for a while, you've probably done that to some extent yourself. It's always nice if you can get other funding, though. Theme, you've got to figure out how you're going to do this and what's your theme. For me, it's more being a medical educator and going into, as my career in this has morphed from going in and doing things, it's now going in and educating people how to do things better. As Ellen mentioned, setting up quality improvement projects, working with people, helping them to progress medical training, medical knowledge in the places where they live. All right. How did you get started forming and strengthening your connections with teams abroad? These have already been mentioned. You've got to have a good mentor. One of those is that guy in that picture, Bill Walsh, who mentored me at Vanderbilt, and just a random thing he introduced me to. I'll show you that in just a second. The second one is just networking with people. And sometimes at these random meetings like PAS or various pediatric meetings, you will just run into people and things will click and things will happen. And sometimes you'll just get these random emails, even with spelling errors in the emails, that you're like, well, I'll just see what happens if I answer this. And so all three of these little bits have a story right here. My mentor, Bill Walsh, introduced me to going to Jordan. And I've been going to Jordan every year since 2015. That's led to some wonderful relationships, a handful of publications with some of the groups there, and trying to work with them to improve neonatal care in their country. So again, look for something you can be invested in, something you can continue to return to, and help people be successful in. The random email with the spelling error, I answered that and wound up in this country called Azerbaijan, which is one of the former Soviet countries. Fascinating place, but that led to a Fulbright specialist grant, and so I got to go with the U.S. State Department backing and work in that country extensively and try to help make a difference in their neonatal and infant mortality rates. That led to some little letter from the president. And I don't care who the president is. If you get a form letter from the White House, that's always a pretty cool thing. And getting to work with the embassy and get that stamp of approval is awesome as well. This amazingly, after they realized I was not a CIA agent, and I'm dead serious about that. For the first two trips, they thought I was CIA. They began to trust me. They showed me all their surfactant in their country and said, help us figure out how to do this. And so if you've heard of the SALSA technique, surfactant administration through laryngeal and supraglottic airways, I've been really involved in that. And as surfactant is becoming more available in the low and middle income countries setting, teaching people how to do this and helping layer that on top of already effective bubble CPAP program. And then just networking led to work with the Institute for Child Health Care in Africa. I know I've met some of you on trips there. Henna and Ami and Ellen, you've been there too, right? I thought I'd remembered you a couple of years ago. So this has turned into like a premier educational event in Africa. I think we had 23 different countries last year, and we're now in the process of expanding this across the African continent, going into Ethiopia, hopefully later this year, and Uganda and Ghana are also on the boards to expand into as we continue to grow. All right, so what's some of the challenges, rewards, and lessons? Challenges and lessons are these. Some of the stuff you're going to do is going to get flushed down the drain. I mean, I've had projects before I've spent personal money on, invested months and months of time, and you go and you try to launch it into the location and it just doesn't stick. And it's incredibly frustrating and sad, but that's just part of life. I mean, that happens here with what you're involved in as well. So trying to design something that's going to be useful, that's going to work, is always vitally important, and getting buy-in from the group that you're working with is important. But sometimes things just doesn't work out the way we hope they do. That next picture is supposed to help you remember that you've got to have flexibility and adaptability. You're going to be faced with all kinds of different obstacles in whatever situation and whatever project you take on and wherever you're working. And that can be anywhere from getting held up in customs and people threatening you for various things that they want from you, to just logistical challenges of getting supplies, medicines, equipment, things like that, to working within a different culture and in a different language and a different society. But the best thing about all this stuff is this: the people that you're going to encounter and the folks that you're going to work with and the stories that you're going to experience of making a difference. So whether that's enjoying honey wine in Ethiopia or stopping to have tea, because they literally do this in Azerbaijan. You just stop rounds in the neonatal intensive care unit and nothing interrupts tea time. So you have to stop and drink tea. Or whether that's in Jordan, working with the folks there as they implement salsa in that country. So that's it. Hopefully you'll take something from that and something will make sense and you'll learn from all the various different mistakes I have made over the years.
Thanks, Scott. That was really great. Those were some great pictures and videos. And I feel like that has been one of my favorite learning points in global health work, that like it's okay to interrupt our busy task-oriented lives to have like a tea or a coffee break and just like chat and get to know people. So I
Wish we
love
did this in
that.
the United States too. That's when I came back from some of those trips to be like, we've got to start doing this. This is awesome.
I know. I think that would be so great. I love that. We'll bring it here.
Or my favorite is when you're in Ethiopia, they follow a different calendar system. So I'm actually 7 years younger when I go to Ethiopia. So if anyone wants to like reverse time and, be younger, then just go do research in Ethiopia.
Hey, I need the
So
7 years younger than you do, Ellen. So
That's so great. I know. Yeah. Like so many wonderful experiences and different, so many like, yeah, so many different ways of approaching life that we can learn from. Okay, so I have another poll, and then we'll move on to Melissa. So this question is just about what your interests are in global health, whether you're primarily interested in working abroad clinically, or, as Ellen mentioned, working in the US clinically, in a variety of settings, doing research, doing policy and advocacy work, working in education, whether that might be like drawing more trainees into global health work in the US or working on education abroad, or if there's something totally different that you can write in the chat. Okay. Oh, there's one last response. Okay, great. If anyone else wants to respond, go ahead now. Otherwise, I will end the poll and share our results. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of people interested in education, almost half of our participants. And then the next most common interest is clinical practice, and then research, and then policy and advocacy work. Cool. That's super helpful to know. Okay. So with that, I'll pass it off to Melissa.
Excellent. Let's see if I can. Okay, could I get a thumbs up to see if that looks right? Okay, excellent. So it is difficult to go third after two amazing speakers. And I think that you will see in my short introduction similar common themes. So I've kind of organized this talk about global health and neonatology on the who, what, where, and how. And I thought I'd start by saying a little bit of who I am. So you know that I am a neonatologist and I do have a clinical practice. So I take care of patients here at UNC at the main campus, Chapel Hill. I am also a global health researcher. So my goal is to bring that number up a little bit higher, that very small number that was interested in global health research. Maybe by the end of this, I could bring that up a little bit higher. But I do most of my work in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I am also an educator, both here domestically, but also a global health educator. And I had the honor of being on a panel of pediatric global health educators to create an accreditation process for pediatric global health fellowships. So happy to chat about that if that's of interest to anybody. In addition, we talked about this a little bit briefly. I have a whole life outside of neonatology and global health, and I bring that up here because some of the decisions that I've made in my career have been because of the other aspects of my life. So I'm a mom, I'm married, I'm a wife, and then we also own a dog. So I do have gratuitous dog pictures at the end. And these are pictures of our family. We go to family camp in the summers, and it is a lot of fun. I get laughed at a lot by my now teenagers. So keeping with the theme of how it started, I am from a small town in Ohio, and I grew up in a very middle-class family that did not travel much. Travel was quite a luxury. So we did not do international travel until I was at the end of high school and early college. I will put in a plug for those high school French classes. Ellen, I'm sorry they didn't work out for you, but they're great for me in Francophone Africa. So come to the Congo and we can dust off your French.
Melissa, I just discovered I just started working in Burundi 2 years ago and I get to use all of my French. It's incredible. I just got back 2 days ago. So I've been speaking French for the last 3 weeks. So it all worked out.
Awesome. Très bien. So my mom encouraged me to study abroad. I minored in French and studied abroad in France, and that experience really opened my eyes just to kind of being a global citizen and global populations. So when I went to medical school back in Ohio, I sought out international experiences. I am a little bit older than Ellen, probably even her Ethiopian age. So back when I was coming up, it was not super common to have international experiences, but I did, there were programs in Swaziland, so I spent some time there. That is a picture of me in Peru doing an anemia campaign. Then when I went to residency, I did some HIV research in Thailand, and all of those experiences ultimately led me to pursuing a fellowship where I could do global health as my scholarly activity. And that's how I came to the University of North Carolina, where I have stayed after fellowship for faculty. Oh. And it looks like I might have frozen.
Feel free to try resharing, and if not, if that doesn't work, I can share your slides also.
It looks like my computer is frozen.
Oh no,
Hear me?
we can still see you.
Oh, you can see me. Great.
Yeah.
I would love to stop sharing if I could. Everything is just frozen.
Try hitting your escape button and see if it'll let you out of it and come back in. Oh, she's frozen now too, isn't she? Yep.
Oh no.
I think this is a good global life lesson, which is IT sometimes isn't going to work.
This is very true. Yes. 100%. Well, maybe we'll just take advantage and do another poll question. Well, I wonder if Melissa will just will hopefully return to us shortly, and I'll get her slides ready to go also in case that's helpful. Okay, so let's see, why don't we do a poll question about areas where people have worked or are interested in working. So this question, you can see there are a lot of different regions that we've listed here, and you can check more than one, but go ahead and just check off the region of the world that you have worked in or are the most interested in working in. Great, okay. So let me share these results with everyone. So it looks like, oh, hi, Melissa. We just figured we'd do a poll while we were waiting, and I have your slides ready so I can share them if you need. Okay, so this is just a question on where folks have worked or are interested in working. So a lot of folks who are interested in working in the US, Latin America, and the Caribbean, one person for Eastern Europe, for a good portion for Middle East, North Africa. I think the majority, or kind of the most interest in Sub-Saharan Africa. And then there's some interest in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and not sure yet. So really a good representation of places across the world. And good reminder that this is work that is relevant across the world, as is indicated in the name, global health. Okay, let me share your slide.
I'm so sorry about that. My computer restarted for unexplicable reasons, but I'm glad that I'm on my phone now, and I'm glad that I sent that to you ahead of time.
Yeah, that worked out well. Okay, let's see. My computer is being a little fritzy too, so hopefully it can handle the PowerPoint also.
I have a lot of advances through the slide too, so
Okay.
hopefully that's not a problem. And I'm trying to get back on my computer. Oh, I could actually.
Okay, mine doesn't seem to want to enter like full screen mode for some reason. And it also seems a little bit frozen.
I might be able to get it back on too.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm so sorry about this.
No problem. As Ellen said, this is like the reality of global health work.
As soon as it
Oh,
are
there
we
we go.
back running?
Great.
Okay, my apologies. I think you
No
heard my
problem.
story though. So again, thank you for that. I wanted to in addition to introducing myself, I wanted to tell you who we are as a team. So I have a wonderful set of colleagues, Carl Bose, who you saw in Ellen's slides, but he has been a mentor through my fellowship, and Jackie Patterson, who is a wonderful neonatologist that I get to work with every day. We are kind of the global health group here at UNC. And we have partners outside of the School of Medicine, outside of our division in our School of Public Health. We also have wonderful partners at the Kinshasa School of Public Health in the DRC. We work with colleagues at other institutions, including RTI International. So these are some of the biostatisticians there. And then I am fortunate enough to work with a network of researchers across the globe in India, Zambia, Kenya, Pakistan, Guatemala, and Bangladesh. So I've kind of given you the who, so what's the what? So I do clinical research that focuses on low and lower middle income countries. I do this primarily through the Global Research Network through NICHD, the Global Network for Women's and Children's Health Research. Similar to other research networks, we unite to lead multinational studies on health problems during the periods of pregnancy, infancy, and childhood. So we're a network of 7 US institutions, each partnered with an international site to do this research. And as mentioned, I lead the UNC DRC partnership. So this map kind of introduces you to our international areas. So Guatemala, DRC, Zambia, Bangladesh, 2 sites in India, and Pakistan, Argentina, and Kenya have also had sites within the global network during its history. And what is it that we do? So global health research is no different than any other kind of research. This is a figure that I use often to talk to people who are unfamiliar with global health research, but hopefully this is very familiar. So biomedical research can start with basic science discovery, leading through moving into humans to a clinical application and getting incorporated into clinical practice through implementation, which will lead to a health impact. And global health research is no different. I spend most of my time here determining doing clinical trials to determine what interventions actually make a difference within the settings in which they will be used to improve morbidity and mortality. And then my colleague, Jackie Patterson, really works on the implementation arm of that to get known interventions to the bedside every time to improve healthcare. And where is it that I work? If you've seen this picture before, you'll know that it's a time series of images that all show the Earth at night from space. And I think it gives a good visual representation of the areas in the globe that have high populations and also the access to electricity. So you can see the high income countries have lots of light that can be seen from space, lots of people, lots of access to electricity. But if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, despite its high population, you really don't see the light from space. So here's where I work in that dark region there in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then the last thing I'd finish with is the how. So I decided to do this as 3 pieces of unsolicited advice. And these are kinds of things I've learned along the way. So my first piece is similar to what Scott mentioned. I've told you my journey and kind of prepared it as if I prepared my CV. So as if it were all linear and things kind of went exactly according to plan. But this is just a reminder that even though I recommend that you begin with the end in mind to say, I want a career in global health. Remember that the CV is the stuff that sticks. I don't have listed all of the grants that I wrote that didn't get funded or all of the manuscripts that are kind of languishing somewhere. And more the story looks more like this. Lots of turns. It's beautiful, but it's not linear. The second piece of advice is to plan for a 30-year career. And now that I'm about 10 to 15 years in, I might change that to 35 or 40, might work a little bit longer. But in my mind, I thought my career might look like this. And I used the same categories that I did when I introduced myself, that I would have this nice, neat kind of global aspect of my career, a clinical aspect of career, and have time for kind of personal and family pursuits. But in reality, it rarely looks like this pie chart, and it looks a lot more like this. So if you looked at my 30-year career by years on the x-axis there are years that I spend a lot more time doing the clinical aspects of my job, like fellowship might look like this. And there are years where I took maternity leave, for example, where it's much more time personal and family. And then now I'm doing a huge research study, so it's a bit more global. But over the course of the 30 years, it has the same kind of distribution as that pie chart, but just recognize that it looks very different, but keep up the pace as if it's a 30-year career, not always a sprint. And then this is a common theme, I think, is to look for the puzzle pieces that kind of lead to a successful project or a successful career. These are the 4 that I found were really important. If I could have some element of each of these, so good infrastructure, good partnerships, international partnerships, supportive division, a good mentor and a good team. You've heard mentorship kind of throughout all of our presentations. A good project. Sometimes, I work on projects that I just am passionate about, and that kind of carries everything. And then funding. The secret to success, Carl Bose tells me, is finding something you love and convincing someone to pay you for it. Then you'll never work a day. So if you can look for these puzzle pieces, try to fit them together. They are rarely equal in all 4 elements in every project. But I have found that if I have a good team and a good infrastructure, even if the project is one I'm not maybe the most passionate about, I can still have fun and have a successful project. Or if there's not as much funding, but I have good infrastructure, team, and project, we can overcome funding challenges. So I would say to look for those puzzle pieces. And then I'm happy to connect if anyone would like. This is the gratuitous dog picture. That is actually my dog. I've never had a dog before. And I am now not only own a dog, but I had somebody on Etsy make this portrait of said dog. So I have changed a lot. And that's all I have.
That is super and wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for the dog pictures also. Yeah, thank you to all 3 of you. That was a lot of really wonderful information, and so much to think about and process. And so I'm wondering if we'll kind of open it up to the audience, if folks have questions for any of our 3 panelists. If you want to just go ahead and raise your hand, and then when you ask your question, if you could just say a little bit about your background, kind of where you are at in training, and then what your question is. And if no one has questions, we have a Oh,
say
perfect.
something real
Okay, great.
quick since we were talking. Oh, you got a question? Okay, good. I'll save it in case there's another dead point. I was going to talk about funding a little bit and some
Yes.
things about funding. Remind me.
Awesome. Cool. I think that would be super useful. Um, Elias, is that how you say your name?
Unfortunately, I got this link from my friend. So my name is actually Macy Cottrell. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But I'm a pediatrics resident at Baylor, currently doing my 3rd year in Malawi. So I've been here about 7 months now and am interested in applying NEO this summer. I'm very excited about it. I see a me on there. Hey, it's good to see you. My question is maybe a little bit more personal than broad spectrum career goals. What I've seen here in Malawi is that sometimes, obviously, one of the bigger challenges is resources. But sometimes, even if those resources are present, there can be difficulty in shifting a culture around it and how a team practices medicine because some pieces are so ingrained and there are ingrained beliefs in what will work best. And especially in neonatology, I've seen almost maybe a learned futility in trying to help some of these babies that are really small because a lot of the clinical teams here haven't seen those babies survive in the past, which I think is pretty reasonable. But I was just curious if any of you have encountered similar challenges in obviously we're outsiders coming into some of these situations. And if you have an idea like surfactant or helping babies breathe, what does it look like to shift some of the culture around that? Of course, with humility and trying to change some of those long-term outcomes that way.
Yeah, so let me take a first stab at that, guys, because I've got a few more years on you. I mean that is no difference than in the United States too, shifting cultures. And you think about the 22 weekers that we're all taking care of now. I mean, that was just a decade ago where, well, if you're 22 weeks, we're not even going to offer anything. So I think in neonatology, we're constantly having to shift people's perception of what is and what can be and what we can do. I think specifically to address the culture situation that you're bringing up, I think it's the emphasis of what they can do, walking with them on that journey, uh, teaching them the possibilities, helping them see that other people in similar settings and cultures are having success doing things differently and doing things that they might not have thought they could have done. That's a little bit what the conference that I showed you in Africa is about. And we actually have people from Malawi come. Actually have a project in Malawi right now too. We're working on. So I think events and things like that are super useful to help people see that they're not walking alone with these opportunities and things that they're trying to do. I hope that makes sense.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas? That's a first stab at that. That's a complex question, though.
Yeah, sorry.
I think I would chime in. Well, just for a little bit of fun here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you guys see the first slide I started with here? So this is actually at that conference that Scott was talking about. Oh, my weird closed captioning's on. I have had a huge challenge with this, and I think a lot of the times the answer is that you're not going to be the one who's going to solve it, but you could help put a team together who could solve the problem. And that's why I think I'm such a huge fan of quality improvement, because one of the first steps when you're doing QI is to put together a multidisciplinary team of people who actually work at the center, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, the interdisciplinary team. And while you are part of that team as someone who has training in, whether it's QI or whatever your area of expertise is, oftentimes, seeing it demonstrated, but also demonstrated by someone who is part of the team and part of the culture. Great example of this is the rates of 1 hour of uninterrupted skin to skin, which is one of the best ways to improve outcomes for neonates, is simply not practiced in all of my clinical sites that I work at in Somalia. It is a Muslim country, and they do not have safe ways to protect the women from the male staff to create privacy, to allow the mother to feel comfortable to take off her hijab or to allow the baby to go to breast right away. And so it has taken significant initiatives with ideas generated from our team. This is our team from Somalia, who we actually paid for to be able to go to the conference, where they got lots of great ideas, learned a lot about these initiatives, and were able to actually create a QI project around creating some safe protective barriers. And it was wildly successful, but it took buy-in from local staff to really make it happen. Because if I came in and told them to do these, it would have failed every time. We still have ways to go and lots of room for improvement, but I think that's a great way to start thinking about it, which is flip it on its head and think about how you can recruit local experts to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, just along that line, I think as you go into this, always think about how you can work yourself out of a job, and you have to find another country you can go to and help. So if you take that attitude and the humility that comes with that, that you're there to train people and help people and walk with them in their journey so that they know everything that you know and you don't have to keep coming back and you've got to find another place. I think that's a great way to look at global health and what you're trying to do.
No, I like that. Thank you both so much. I like the imagery of building that network outside of yourself. It's helpful.
There's a question in the chat from Meharit. She says, thank you for such an inspirational discussion. Have any of you worked on capacity building through training, and have any insight in doing so in terms of funding pathways, et cetera? I'm interested in partnering with an institution to develop a neonatology fellowship program in Ethiopia, through which I hope to improve neonatal clinical care.
Yeah, I'll take this one stab at this one real quick too, because I was actually in Addis in January with Gates funded study and Vermont Oxford Network and Meheret. I hope I'm saying that right. I know they have a neonatology program at St. Paul's in Addis, and that's been quite successful. There's been one of the fellows there we've done some work with on a project. As far as funding pathways, that's the challenging part right now of doing global health and trying to figure out how you can fund these things, whether it's through non-governmental entities, NGOs, various partnerships with industry. I've had an opportunity to do some industry funded work. And so when I do that, I've got a special fund with my university that money goes into and then allows me to fund global health work. So it's been a really nice partnership and a way to really isolate and protect yourselves from the funding cutbacks that you're going to be seeing and are going to be occurring because you're getting your funding from other sources. So think about not only with your governments where you can get funding through, but all the other different sources and entities that things can come through. Industry is very interested in trying to get these changes to happen in low and middle income countries, and will be happy to partner with you on things. I think you have to be careful when you do that and make sure it's done right. But it is an opportunity to help you get what you want to do and accomplish what you want to do in those circumstances. And there's ways to do that. That'd be a whole different conversation to have and how to do that well. But hopefully that's some ideas.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And if you want to send any emails, so just to add on what Scott said, I actually started in Addis, and I also work, the Vermont Oxford Network has a very significant partnership that Dr. Danielle Arrett actually heads. We've started a neonatal fellowship training program at Black Lion Tikarambesa in Addis as well, and actually also a master's in neonatal nursing program, because we know that there's a huge need for sort of the, kind of the equivalent of advanced practice providers that we utilize here in the US. And so the Vermont Oxford Network, actually, this is one of their huge areas of focus. And I think getting connected with them would be an excellent start. I also work at St. Paul's too. So there's lots of us who are working in that domain. So feel free to reach out and contact us and see how we can help.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Like you are on the right call with the right people for that.
Awesome. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
and
really why.
ICHA, that Institute for Child Healthcare Africa, is actually, we're working with the Ministry of Health in Ethiopia now to bring the conference there. That's either going to happen in August or in December. We're still trying to get dates sort of figured out, but we'll need some people to come help teach if you know anybody that might be interested.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did my medical school in the northern part of Ethiopia. I don't know if any of you have been in Gondar, but
I would love to go to Gondor. That's on my
it's a
list.
huge, yeah, it's a huge need there. Lots of pediatricians, very little neonatology, training base to help babies there, and was a huge catchment area all the way to Sudan. And the labor and delivery, even MFM training has taken off, but it's the care of neonatology is kind of hand tying for even MFM individuals to appropriately care for high risk pregnancies because the babies don't survive. And I knew about the St. Paul's fellowship and this Addis, but the problem is very small numbers and people who do not necessarily want to leave the capital city. It leaves all this huge other part of the country unserved. And my goal was to kind of do something very similar that Vaughan did with St. Paul, but in Gondar, to kind of help that northern eastern part of Ethiopia. So you probably will hear back from me, and I will touch base with you all. Thank you for all the help.
Thank you so much. Man, this has been such a wonderful discussion, and I'm glad. I think we have formed some nice connections also, that hopefully will continue in the future. To our panelists, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind just putting your email addresses in the chat, if you don't mind, if people can reach out to you afterwards. Just being cognizant of time, I feel like this discussion could go on for hours, but I know people have to go and have to get on with their day. So thank you all so much for joining. The recording will be available on the TCAN YouTube channel in case you want to share it with anyone. And I'll put my email in the chat as well in case you want to reach out to me, and I can connect you with anyone as well who's here. Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If anyone has any final words, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we will say happy Wednesday.
Thank you, Hannah, for the fabulous facilitation.
Agree. And feel free to reach out to me. Everybody interested in Global Health Neonatal Fellowship, come to UNC.
It's a small world and we all know each other, so.
It's a very small world in global health and neonatology. So
Yeah.
everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for letting me participate.
Thank you too. Yeah.
Mhm.